All right, everyone. I'm doing the take two now on the recording because we had technical issues with Louis. I shared in the previous one anyway that I've known Louis for 5, 6, 7 years. I don't even remember. A while ago as a real estate investor, and then he did other business, and now back to real estate. And now he's an author, so we were talking multiple times we met. He talked about writing a book, and we have similar passion for reading books and all. So he was sharing that, and invited him to come to the podcast. Well, YouTube recording anyway. I don't call it podcast anymore. So anyway, so he's to share his history and how he came to write the book. So we will talk about the book, but also his, real estate career, what he got in there, and anything else that comes up. So Louis, kind of go through again, I guess, a little bit of your history, how you got into the real estate business, despite having a well-educated background, I guess, and
Yeah.
now on to writing the book.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Raju. So yeah, born and raised in the Dallas area. My family are immigrants and they came up in the restaurant industry. So we still own a restaurant here in Lakewood area of Dallas, One Best Pizza in Dallas a few times. And, that experience seeing my parents and, working in the restaurant really made an impact on me growing up. And despite, getting degrees in engineering and an MBA, I was compelled to start my own business. And my first shot at that was in real estate. So started flipping houses and running construction crews, Airbnbs, and just whatever I could sink my teeth into in residential real estate. You know, it was going all right. I wanted to get into commercial real estate, so I went door to door with my resume and finally found a job with a commercial developer, and things were looking great. And then 2 weeks later, COVID started. So kind of derailed everything, but just so happened to coincide with a friend of mine moving from Colorado to Oklahoma to start a can farm. And so I visited him a couple times and decided I would want to take a shot. And so liquidated my assets and worked on making a farm in Oklahoma. And while it didn't work out because the licensing, was too many licenses and price compression, all that stuff. While I was there, I had a moment of insight that I decided to turn into this book. I was on the phone with my girlfriend at the time, and she was having a sort of, you know, emotional kind of conflict with one of her family members. And she was talking through it with me. She was really upset, and I was trying to console her, right? They made a big deal about how well they were doing. She wasn't doing so great at the time, and so she felt, a little bit perturbed. And trying to console her, I told her, obviously she's judging. If she's judging you, that means she's judging herself, and she's projecting that judgment onto you. That's her problem, and it helped a little bit, but obviously she was still, kind of riled up. And I thought to myself, you're here with your family, you flew all this way, there's so many things to be grateful about. If you could tap into that gratitude, I'm sure all this stuff would just dissolve. And for your cousin, if she could tap into a little bit of humility in that moment, she wouldn't have felt the need to kind of brag about herself or whatever. And, as the conversation continued, I thought to myself, wait a minute, I wonder if there's other emotions that could just kind of be dissolved with a simple kind of virtue, right? And I started just journaling it down, and I made a little Excel spreadsheet of all the emotions and stuff, and eventually refined it. And it turned into this book that you see right here, Five Levels of Conscience,
Hmm.
a practical guide to complete emotional mastery. And what that means is
Hmm.
it's a framework to reflect on
Hmm.
your emotions,
Hmm.
all your emotions, how they make you behave, how
Hmm.
that behavior manifests in your life, what causes those emotions, and what to
Hmm.
do about it, right? Like there's a lot of frameworks out there, power versus force, where, it's the levels of consciousness and, it tells you some information, but like, what do you do in that moment that you're feeling envy? There's not really a framework for that.
Hmm.
And so I'll show you what it kind of turned into.
Mm-hmm.
This chart right here,
Mm-hmm.
the five levels of conscience.
Mm.
And before I dive deep into it, was there anything you want to share or ask about the kind of the origin story?
Yeah, no, we'll get into that later, but go ahead and explain because I want to go back to your real estate and then we'll come back dive into it because I got different thoughts and questions we'll ask. We'll go into it, but I want you to first kind of go through your process and so people understand what your 5 step process and I guess yeah, details you got to go read his books. But, high level, I guess if you want to share so people get what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So this is the chart, right? And at the lowest level, we have the most intense desires for change. So we're the most emotionally perturbed and just the most disrupted at the lowest level. And at
Mm-hmm.
the highest level, there's no need for change. We are
Mm-hmm.
playfully enjoying the moment, which is obviously the state we all want to be in. Regardless of what the moment looks like, we want to be able to enjoy it, have fun,
Mm-hmm.
live, love, laugh, all that stuff, right? So if we look at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
we see the emotions of fear, frustration, and greed.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these emotions share a common impulse, the impulse to control situations, outcomes, information, people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which leads us to manipulate, to lie, to cheat, to steal in an effort to fulfill our need for security. So we feel insecure, we feel unsafe. We're in that plane in the air. We don't know how it works. We're afraid because there's turbulence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it triggers us, right? We start feeling fear. We get frustrated at the situation. I can't believe I'm having to take this flight and all this kind of stuff. And I just want to like see and I want certainty and I want to control this outcome. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the solution that can dissolve this process
Mm-hmm.
is acceptance. So in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, in the air, right? No amount of anxiety or worry is going to keep that plane in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And the plane doesn't care, but your body does, right? You're feeling, unwell, you're sweating, and then just you're miserable in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can integrate in that moment acceptance of death, acceptance that you can't control the plane. So why worry about it? Just
Mm-hmm.
that emotional pattern dissolves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, I've made a little archetype for each level to remember it by. The narcissist
Mm-hmm.
is, as people know, the typical manipulator, the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend that you hate is the narcissist, right? Because he was controlling, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I show a process in the book that
Mm-hmm.
helps you kind of integrate this virtue in the moment. So if I realize, I'm frustrated, I'm in traffic, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
so frustrated, I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I can note, oh, wow, what is the solution in this moment? It's acceptance. So you take a few deep breaths,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of relax your body, start with your eyes and your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
move to your shoulders, just your typical kind of mindfulness meditation, right? You're emptying your mind of the thoughts that are causing
Mm-hmm.
these emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates space
Mm-hmm.
for you to be able to replace those thoughts with thoughts that generate acceptance. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I trust in the universe. I believe whatever happens, happens for the best.
Mm-hmm.
I release control to a higher power that's on my side.
Mm-hmm.
And you affirm this virtue of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll recognize as you do that,
Mm-hmm.
this pattern dissolves and you usually get some sort of insight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm frustrated in traffic, I integrate acceptance. Oh, I'm just worried that I'm going to be late and people are going to judge me. I don't need to do that. It's fine. People are late all the time. It's okay. You get these insights, these perspective shifts
Mm-hmm.
as you integrate these virtues and dissolve these emotions. So in a way, these emotions are
Mm-hmm.
signals
Mm-hmm.
that your perspective needs to change. They're an opportunity. We shouldn't look at these negative emotions as they're ruining my life and I just need to get rid of them and all this stuff. No, they're a signal saying, hey, there's something you're missing here. Pay attention. You
Mhm.
know, you're not, you're frustrated on your way to this job interview
Mhm.
and you're going to ruin it because you don't have these virtues integrated. That's why you're frustrated.
Mhm.
So that's the ultimate concept, right? And I'll kind of go through the other levels, right? Level two is the egotist,
Mhm.
and it's triggered by our need for impact, our need to, you know, make our mark on the world, to spray paint the train car so people know who we were, the cave paintings. Like we need to make an impact. Once we feel safe,
Mhm.
I want to make an impact. I want people to remember me and I want to have an impact on my environment and feel autonomous and that kind of thing, right? That's our ego.
Mhm.
And when it gets triggered, when we feel impactless or, you know, irrelevant, it
Mhm.
triggers despair,
Mhm.
hatred, and envy. And you
Mhm.
see these columns, right? These are your perspectives that you're looking at. So to the self, to
Mhm.
creation, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. I call it the creator.
Mhm.
And then to others is the final column. So if I'm triggered in this state and I look inwardly, I'm going to feel despair. If I look at the universe or I'm thinking about all the things inside of my control, I'm just hateful and spiteful. And if I look at others, I get envious of what they have, right? And this
Mhm.
leads to an impulse to harm either ourself or others.
Mhm.
And that manifests as sabotage, right? And this process, these feelings of despair and envy cannot coexist
Mhm.
with gratitude. So if I do that same process, empty my mind,
Mhm.
relax, create space away
Mhm.
from those thoughts, replace those thoughts with gratitude for whatever. I'm here, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I have running water, I have a cell phone with all of the information in the universe.
Mhm.
Then those feelings of despair and envy dissolve, right?
Mhm.
The third level is the critic. Our inner
Mhm.
critic just wants validation. So, for example, in that story I told you earlier, if her cousin was feeling arrogant, or it was no different from feeling shame. If
Mhm.
she looked internally, she probably felt ashamed about something. So she was trying to establish dominance through
Mhm.
arrogance because she was judging
Mhm.
herself, her cousin, whatever. And this manifests as isolation, right? So in shame, we self isolate. When we're entitled and arrogant, people don't want to be around us. And, isolation is really bad for you. It can be good in small doses, but
Mhm.
chronically, it's one of the worst punishment. We do this to prisoners. We keep prisoners away from other criminals as punishment, right? And the way you dissolve that pattern is through humility. And humility, not in the sense that I am below others and others are greater than me or like that kind of thing. Humility in the sense that we are all connected, we are all equal, we are all humans, we're all mammals, we're all earthlings, me and this tree, we're all made of the same stardust. And the breath that I take, eventually somebody in China is going to breathe that air. And in the past, it was, breathed by Jesus 3,000 years ago. Like we're all connected, we're all one being. And when you integrate that, how could you possibly feel shame? How could you possibly feel arrogant? When you truly integrate that we're all connected and equal. So that's what dissolves that. And the practice for that one
Mhm.
is what's called Ho'oponopono. It's a
Mhm.
practice in Hawaii, I think is where it originated,
Mhm.
of a chant of four things. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. When you go through those four things, you dissolve that kind of separateness and integrate that humility. You can also kind of just imagine sending love towards everybody and everything. You can
Mhm.
imagine being connected with everyone and everything, but that humility will dissolve level three.
Mhm.
And level four is the empath, right? This is what a lot of people talk about these days. They, you know, identify with this term and this pattern, and they, in a lot of ways, they're attached to it, and they think it makes them kind of morally superior in a lot of ways. But there's a lot of drawbacks. You know,
Mhm.
um, it is inspired by our need for connection, and the emotions are peace, faith, and compassion. The impulse is to do good, to make things better, and it results in positivity. But the problem with the empath is it still seeks to change what is. I want to do good. I want to change things for the better, for your better, right? What you might think is best may not always be the best, you know?
Mhm.
And that's where empaths typically get caught in a cycle with a
Mhm.
narcissist or, anybody, any of their family members where they're giving, 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 and they feel taken advantage of and spiteful later, you know? Um, that pattern is because they still feel the need to change what is. I still need to do good. I need positivity. And a lot of times it's because they don't feel either connected to others or they don't feel, at peace really. And they think that giving is going to get, they're doing it in a subconscious attempt to heal themselves by healing others. And the way you break that pattern is through fulfillment. And fulfillment I define as the feeling that nothing needs to change. Everything is as it should be. You know, I can just be here and now, and I'm completely, nothing needs to change. And that leads to the highest level, which I call the artist. And that's a need for enjoyment. The emotions are joy, empowerment, and love. The impulse is to play, and it leads to abundance. And abundance, not in the sense of I'm going to have a lot of money and things, abundance in the sense that what I have, I enjoy
Mhm.
so deeply that I don't need anything else. And if things happen to come my way, even better, but I don't need it. And so I'm more likely to give it anyways because I don't, my cup is so full and I'm just here now, playfully enjoying the moment, whatever it looks like, right? So that's the goal. We can live life in that state in any moment, no matter what it looks like. And what really hit that home for me was a story from my real estate investor days. I was going through a bunch of trouble. Like I lost out on a bunch of contracts, had a
Mhm.
girlfriend that broke up with me, and I was just really depressed and down. And so I go to volunteer at this soup kitchen. And, at first I'm thinking this is stupid. Why am I doing this? I don't, watching other people suffering doesn't make me feel better. But I saw this guy get in the line, and halfway through the line, he peeks over and just like starts dancing in the middle of the soup kitchen because they got biscuits today, you
Mhm.
know? And I'm looking at him like, I'm so sad and feeling so bad about myself. I live in a high rise and
Mhm.
I'm traveling the world and I just, have all of these opportunities and stuff. And I'm just like, man, if he can be that happy in this moment in a soup kitchen about a biscuit, like, it's not about how much you have, it's about your mindset and your emotional state, right? And so that's the emotional state that I want people to be in, that playful, just loving joyousness of the present moment. And all it takes is just a quick integration of these four virtues. I accept the moment. I'm grateful for it. I'm connected with all other people in this moment. Nothing needs to change. If you can integrate that daily or any time that you recognize you're feeling one of these emotions and reach this joyous state,
Mhm.
you know, everything is going to work out from there. And that's kind of my thesis. And why I wrote the book and what's in here is just kind of diving into that framework and what fear actually looks like, how to recognize, how to dissolve, why it works, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, do you want to close out the presentation, by
Yeah,
the way? Okay. So, all right. So here's my question. We'll get into real estate a little bit, right? Um, did you ever get into the book called How Emotions Are Made? Ever
I
read the book?
did. I did listen to that book. I listened to it very quickly and wasn't
Okay.
able to glean too much insights from it, but I do. It's a female psychologist, right? She's like a PhD, and yeah, I forget her name.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, just had a quick question on that. But anyway, whether I think we had this conversation about whether you read that or not when we were talking originally when we were explaining the book you were writing and all that stuff. That's set aside, right? Here's my question. So one of the things I've learned is uh, I call emotions energies in motion.
Yep.
and they have to come out,
Yep.
and reacting to that is a different thing, but suppressing is a totally different thing. They're two different things, right? So with that being said, now what triggered you on, I mean, I'm sure something you read or heard or something, because you said you read a lot of books and podcasts and all. What triggered you on this framework versus, I don't know, something else, I guess, right? So what kind of like you this path? What were the trigger points like, oh, this is kind of what it looks like, and at least I'm guessing that's what you worked through yourself, and
Exactly.
maybe helped your friends or family, whoever worked through that, that kind of formulated or solidified the framework. But going to that question, what triggered that framework,
Yeah.
I guess? What was the triggering point?
Great question. It was the first time I asked myself the question of, is there a way to dissolve a negative emotion? Was
Mhm.
during that conversation with my girlfriend.
Okay.
And, it felt like a divine message. Like it didn't seem like it was something I was trying to build towards. It was just like something clicked and I just went into flow state and I just started writing and then I tried it, right?
Mhm.
Like when I would get into these states of despair, I
Mhm.
tried, okay, I know gratitude and
Mhm.
despair can't coexist. I can't be grateful for my misery. Like it's just
Right.
so I tried. I was like, I've done gratitude practices before. I've read tons of the self-help books and whatnot, and practice gratitude, gratitude journal, write yourself a message, all that stuff. And so I just tried it in that moment, and it worked. And then I tried it with my fiance and other people around me, and all this kind of stuff, and it works, right?
Mhm.
So, um, I know your comment on suppression. 100%. You should not be suppressing your emotions.
Mhm.
This framework isn't suppression, it's integration, right?
Right.
And going back to, what I said about that perspective shift,
Mhm.
when these virtues and these emotions are signals that your
Mhm.
perspective is off. You're not looking at the full picture.
Mhm.
There's some belief, internal belief or expectation usually. Usually it's a belief or an expectation. I'm not good enough, or like I can't do this, or I'm from this background, therefore I can't, whatever, or some expectation that if I do this, this should happen. Those are the two things that really tend to cause these negative emotions. And once you integrate
That's
the
the only thing
virtue
actually.
in, say it
But
again.
actually, I mean, expectations is the only thing, really. We don't even have to
Right.
go anywhere else. Pretty much you nailed it there. So,
Yep. And once you integrate the virtue, that's when that expectation dissolves. And when you realize that you had that expectation, I'm feeling envious of my friend with more money, and then I integrate gratitude for what I have, it's like, oh, I don't know what about his life, right? Maybe he's completely miserable other than his money. Maybe he lied and cheated his way and he has to hide and it's just miserable, right? And it's like that you weren't looking at it the right way because you had that expectation that I should have that much money by now, and et cetera, et cetera. And the expectation that if I had that money, then I'll be happy or I'll get that girl or whatever, right?
gotcha. Yeah, no, we'll get back to the book, but first we'll get into a little bit of the real estate, and then we'll circle back to the book, and then we'll close it out. So on the real estate end, right? So you went to because I remember having this conversation with you when you were ready to go to Oklahoma,
Yeah.
all that stuff, and then you came back. Um, what was the hardest lesson you had to learn then? What was the,
In
hardest?
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oh man, how much time do we got?
Well, that's the whole point. Yeah, no, because that's some of the things that people need to understand, right? Like where probably your book came from too, right? That could be the
right,
reason. So,
right.
yeah, anyway, I just, as far as the business, right? What are some of the hard lessons you learned there? Because when you were here, you were doing fairly well with the wholesale Airbnb because we had those conversations. And then, yeah, there was a little bit of a flip of market, but then again, it picked up, right? You
Right.
kind of took a quick turn and went there. That's one of the things, like I met a lot of people. Obviously, I was in real estate a lot. I'm still, I guess I'm investing in one thing that I'm not doing anymore now. But
More than
there was
me.
a period when people were, real estate is not good, and then boom, everybody was doing a lot of money, and then again went down now, right? Like we got this up and down thing.
Right.
Anyway, so what was your, key points you learned, when you took that, like, did you feel like, hey, I made the decision too quickly? That's one. Second thing is, what are the hard lessons you learned?
Yes. So one of the lessons that I learned is that do more research than you think you should. You know, I went in with the assumption that this is, a cash cow, like there's infinite demand, there's no way this could, I'd made that assumption that, oh, demand is not going to be a problem, right? Like it's cannabis. Duh, we're
Yep.
going to sell it, I didn't think, okay, what if they give away 10,000 licenses
Right.
and there's a farm for every 40 people? You know, I didn't do that thought analysis, right? So that was one, So if you're starting a venture, do way more research than you think you need. And if you ever reach into a point where it's like, no, I'm just going to assume, don't assume, get the facts, right? And then the other thing was, you know, everything is hard. It's very rare that you're ever going to find an industry that is just, oh, it's going to be easy, it's going to be a piece of cake, right? In our current economic model, everything is saturated, whether it's
Right.
real estate, whether it's books, whether it's social media, whether it's AI, whatever you're about to do or thinking about doing is saturated.
Right.
So, you know, it's about what resources do you have, what makes you uniquely positioned to succeed, and how long can you stick it out before you give up, you know? And really out of that, what you should be focusing on is what makes you uniquely positioned to succeed. If you are going to write a book, what makes that book unique? And what makes you unique so that you could sell your books, right? If you're going to start a restaurant, what makes your restaurant unique and what makes you uniquely successful at being able to make that succeed? Do you have a 10-year, 20-year background in restaurants? Are you a phenomenal chef? Or are you just are you a construction guy trying to get into restaurants? That's going to be a lot harder. Your timeline horizon is going to be a lot longer, but regardless of what you're doing, it's going to be hard.
Right. Gotcha. No, that's a great point because, one of my lessons was some of the things I did where it bit me was never do anything that you're not personally involved. And same thing, the research part, yeah, you better do your homework really well. Being a very optimistic guy, that's the multiple times I've gotten bitten by that. So that's a great, you know, great example and great lesson for everybody to share. So with that, what is it you're learning now with how the real estate world is? What is it, what are the lessons now for you that you had to pivot or creatively do something? What's going on now for you as far as the real estate world is concerned or the investing world is concerned?
Yeah, so in terms of real estate, I'm thinking just in longer term horizons and niche strategies and that kind of thing, right? And I have a lot of my capital in um, actually stocks and options right now. They're doing super well, thank the Lord, you know. Um, but because I'm in a transition state, I might, I don't know if I'm gonna go move to Spain and start investing in real estate over there. I don't know if this book is going to work out, right? So I don't want to start up a real estate strategy that I can't fulfill, Maybe if there's a quick flip or something comes my way, sure, but I don't want to build a whole acquisition process and model and put together all of these things and website and all this kind of stuff if a year from now, 2 years from now, I'm going to be in Europe, right? So um,
Gotcha.
I'm in kind of a transition phase.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um, but getting back into real estate, it's got to be something that I can commit to for several
Right.
years with a niche strategy.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I was wondering about that because that's my personal opinion now, looking at the real estate market, is it's hard to predict the long term right now. That's the confusion right now.
Right.
Very confusing on where it's going and how things are going to be. What's the job market? The macro and microeconomics is nothing is clear right now. So,
Right.
all right. Well, with that, now going back to that, right? So now that goes back to the book and you talking about being uncertainty. I'm guessing that's where it's helping you a lot now with dealing with uncertainty.
Yeah.
That framework you created for yourself, essentially helping you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know I'm going to be okay regardless. Whatever the moment looks like, whether I got to start from scratch, whether things work out super well, I
Hmm.
know that all I need is
Hmm.
acceptance of that moment,
Hmm.
gratitude for
Hmm.
whatever that moment looks like, a deep connection with everyone and everything, and
Hmm.
fulfillment that that moment's going to be beautiful, whatever it looks like. So absolutely it does. It helps a ton.
Yeah, like Tony Robbins says, or somebody else, several people say this, everything is happening for me, not to me, right? Once
Right.
you change that thing, then you just have to see you never know. Like you talked about, hey, this moment led to this, but then if you're stuck in that moment, then you're thinking, okay, this is it for me. I'm done or whatever. If you
Right.
get stuck in that. All right, awesome. So with that, I forgot one more question I had. Oh yeah, so on the book, you will give me the links and whatever, all that where it's available and all. So is it now available? I guess is it self-published or a publisher? How is that
So I
working out
had
for you?
somebody help me self-publish,
Okay.
essentially. But yeah, it's available on Amazon and Audible and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I made like a quick little online course for people that want an interactive, self-reflective, you know,
Okay.
led situation.
Got you.
Um, so you can find that on fivelevelsbook.com
Right.
and all the
Got
socials at fivelevels.book.
you.
Um, so yeah, that's
So
that.
is there a plan for you to maybe like have a coaching program on that? Is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah, I'm offering a personal coaching program, so
Okay.
somebody who wants personal coaching, like we can do that.
Right.
So
Got you.
yeah,
And
more than
then,
happy.
okay, so then you're going to share, I guess, yeah. Obviously, I'll be sharing his information with the clips and whatever I create. So whatever he sends me. So I'm assuming Lewis will list not only the book, but any of his coaching programs and anything available. I guess he will list that so you can reach out to him. All right, then we'll get to the final three questions now. So, other than your book, what's the best book
Yeah.
you've read or your favorite book so far?
Yeah, my number one
Mm.
is Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, right?
Okay.
And I
Hmm.
tell people if there's only ever one book for you to read
Hmm.
that book because that's all you need.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of aligning principles in the book that I wrote in his book
Hmm.
of, eliminating resistance to the present moment. And if
Right.
you can just fully be present with no resistance to what is, that's all you need. Because then you can act clearly and your mind is going to disrupt this process. But if you just remember presence in the now, then you can eliminate the excess stress that your mind causes with these emotions, right? So,
Gotcha. Great book. Yep, definitely. Yeah, I was going to mention another book, but no, this is your selection, so I'll keep it at that. Same tone, but all right. So, what inspires you to get up and do what you do every day?
well, one of them is my son. I just had a son. He's a little over a year old, right?
Okay.
So, I can't recommend it enough. If you want the fastest path to fulfillment, have a child because it's just any moment I can just go look at him and make him
Hmm.
smile, and it's just the most amazing feeling in the world. So that's one, and then the other one is just that I believe that this framework is so uniquely insightful and useful that you know I want to share it with as many people as possible, right? And
Hmm.
I imagine a world where if people are taught this at an early age, and most people reach this state of like, I know what to do whenever I have a negative emotion, I can clean it myself, you
Mm,
know, we can hold each other accountable, right? I use the term emotional hygiene, right?
mhm,
Where we all wash ourselves in the shower every day, otherwise we're going to stink. You know, that probably wasn't, we weren't capable of that before soap and running water, so people probably stunk. You know, in the future, if we have this tool that can cleanse our emotional state, there's no reason, and everybody's aware of it, there's no reason why any of us should be running around envying, shaming,
mhm,
fearing. We should all be able to hold each other accountable to, hey, man, don't stink, don't shame, right? And the world will be a much better place, right? I don't know what it'll look like, but I do know if everybody in the world is enjoying the moment, it's going to look probably a lot better than it does now.
mhm. All right, then the last but not the least, what's the best tip you have that has helped you? I mean, other than your book framework and all, because you already shared that. It's got to be
Right.
something else. The best tip you recently, I guess, maybe. Let's put it that way. More recently, that has helped you that can help others.
Okay. Best tip
Hmm.
recently I can share
Hmm.
that has helped me, that can help others.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there's a guy named Alain de Botton, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
he really shared a super insightful thing that just shifted the way that I see the world in a fundamental manner. And
Hmm.
he says that in the past,
Hmm.
thousands of years ago,
Hmm.
people were more, they looked at wealth
Hmm.
more so as something that luck made a part of, right? That's why you're fortunate to make a fortune.
Hmm.
There's so much luck that goes into it, being in the right time at the right place, being around the right people who want to help, all of these factors that go into
Hmm.
luck
Hmm.
being associated with wealth.
Hmm.
And our current you know mindset is everything's my fault, 100% personal accountability. If I'm not
Hmm.
wealthy, that means I'm terrible and shameful and it was my fault and all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And that's not good. That's not healthy. It's not right. So remembering that maybe you won't be wealthy because you're not fortunate
Right.
to be wealthy, right? But you can still be joyous and playful in the moment, right? So Um, I think that's a really good tip, and I was so thankful to have heard it because I've been so hard on myself, and that was another one of the reasons why I went to Oklahoma. It was
Right.
this fear and greed of wanting to make all this fast money and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's the one tip is, fortune and fortunate are synonyms. And, a good quote that we can leave off with is
Hmm.
an ancient Chinese quote. They said, "The man who blames others is lost. The man who blames himself is halfway there. The man who blames no one has arrived."
There you go. Yeah, that's a great quote to leave with. All right, Louis, thanks for taking the time, and I'll be sharing all the info Louis has on his book, potential coaching program, and whatever else he's going to share. I'm going to share with Clip, so reach out to him with whatever interests you. Obviously, read his book. Or I don't know if he has a website that explains his methodology. Maybe that, you know, gets into maybe you want to talk to him more about that. Either way, he shared a lot with the chart. So that itself should give you a good idea if you watch the video. So again, Louis, thanks for taking the time, man.
My
Appreciate it.
pleasure. Yep. Talk soon, Reggie.